Thank you for listening to this PodcastOne Sportsnet production, available on Apple Podcasts and PodcastOne.
The following program is a PodcastOne.com production.
From Hollywood, California, by way of the Broken Skull Ranch, this is the Steve Austin Show.
Give me a hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Now, here's Steve Austin.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Steve Austin Show. I am coming to you from the mean streets of Los Angeles, California, right here as I speak. Hershey the Wonder Dog is laying on the couch beside me at 316 Gimmick Street. Hey, man, I got a great show for you today. A couple of weeks back, I drove down to Huntington Beach, California to Foose Design and talked to the one and only legendary car builder designer, Chip Foose. I'm a huge fan of the Overhaulin show, and he gave me a tour of the garage, some of his badass cars, and we talked about how he got his start in the design business. We talked about the show Overhaulin and what he's got coming up this fall. I had a great time talking to Chip, and as soon as I rolled in there, man, I hit the record button and we started shooting the breeze and talking, and after about 40 minutes in, we took a little bit of a break, and he gave me a tour of the facility. I met all the guys working in the garage. A guy came in from Revell Models, you know, those plastic model cars that you build. Chip made some, okays on some of the designs that they were coming up with, and he was taking care of a lot of business. And then he started showing me some of the custom cars that they were working on. And one car in particular, I can't remember which one it was, but it had been in there for 3 years. And he goes over and he shows me this just rack full of parts that were custom made, these brass railings that were going to go on top of the fenders. And you're looking at all these brackets and these things and all the cars that he's working on, and I'm taking all this information in with my eyes and listening to Chip talk. And I'm going to sit there, you'll listen to this conversation, and I'll tell you, it's such a mind-blowing experience to see such high craftsmanship type work being done. I just hope that I was able to capture it enough for you to hear it in your ears and to see what we were talking about, because this was kind of a podcast that I really needed a camera there to record the footage. Because, man, here's the thing. Chip Foose is a super cool guy. He's very down to earth. He's super easy to talk to. But when he starts talking cars and you're looking at the visual stuff that he's talking about, accomplishing and designing, it's like looking into the head of Einstein thinking about E equals MC squared. When you're talking to Chip Foose, he's a regular cat, but when it comes to cars and design, the guy is an absolute genius. That's the level that he's at. Anyway, I was very excited to go down there and talk about cars, automobiles, design work, and all the stuff that he does. So I hope the podcast does some justice, but I've been a huge fan of his Overhaulin show for years, and it wasn't until I started doing my research on Chip that I just discovered that in 2015, the last episode of Overhaulin was played on TV. I've been watching reruns. So anyway, you'll find out in the conversation. I think he's in talks to do another show. We'll see what comes of that, but I got to give a shout-out to everybody down there at Foose Design. You talk about first-class people. Everybody was very friendly. And the whole facility is like super clean. It's like OCD clean. There's not a speck of dust anywhere. And these guys are out there doing these work on these cars, these vehicles, these custom things, all kinds of cool stuff laying around. It was just a wonderful facility. And because I'm such a car lover, I was in heaven. So I got to give a big shout out to Chip for giving me about 2 or 3 hours of his time. This podcast will probably only last for an hour, but I hung around and got a tour of the facility, saw the inner workings, his bicycle collection, some of his neons. He collects Coca-Cola stuff just like I do. In the future, I'll roll down there again and just probably just watch him do some work on cars. And you know what? If I can find a particular car, maybe I'll have Chip build one for me finally. I've been wanting to do a muscle car for a long time. And if I do, there's only one guy that's going to do it, and that guy is Chip Foose. So anyway, Chip Foose is standing by. But first, before we get into some reads, let's talk a little bit about UFC 200. Just happened this weekend. God dang, man. You talk about a hell of a damn fight card. I enjoyed the hell out of that damn fight. And, when you start off the night with Cain Velasquez taking on Travis Brown. And finally, Cain, man, it looks like Cain has regained his form. He looked fantastic out there against a very tough Travis Brown, and was able to get the win there in pretty easy fashion, I dare say, with all due respect to Travis Brown, who's a tough-ass cat. No doubt about it, but it's great to see Cain back in action. We'll see where he goes from here. Man, looking at the Jose Aldo match against Frankie Edgar, man, I was really cheering for Frankie Edgar because he just goes up in weight class, down in weight class. It just seems like, man, all those classic battles with Gray Maynard, it's just like Jose Aldo just looks so much bigger and stronger, and Edgar would try to take him down, and Jose Aldo would almost throw him across the ring. But Frankie Edgar just brings it, and he's just relentless, that tremendous footwork. But Jose Aldo was just too much, and I guess that sets up the big rematch between Jose Aldo and Conor McGregor. And boy, I tell you what, that's going to be a good fight. That's going to be a hell of a card. And we'll see what comes out of this fight, because in that first fight between Jose Aldo and Conor McGregor, I think McGregor got into Jose's head, and they rushed together. Jose got clipped. He went down. Shortest fight in the history of the UFC, and Conor McGregor gets his hand raised. So, boy, there's going to be some real personal issues going into that rematch. And then, boy, I tell you what, I felt so bad for my man, DC, Daniel Cormier. John Jones tested dirty, got tossed out of UFC 200. He's facing a 2-year suspension. They bring in Anderson Silva on 2 days' notice. Man, DC probably got his pay cut in half. He put his heart and soul in that camp into facing one man. That man's name was John Jones, and there was a personal issue at stake along with the gold belt. And so Anderson Silva has the guts to step in. And I'll tell you what, this was a real interesting fight, because to me, when the crowd started booing just because DC wanted to get Anderson on the ground and use his wrestling, and Silva is extremely dangerous with 2 days fight or 2 months fight, 2 months notice for a fight, I don't care what it is. When you're fighting probably the greatest MMA fighter of all time, and you just impose your will on him, and your will is take him to the ground because you want the win, and the crowd starts booing, I don't know, dude. You talk about weird. The dude's doing what he has to do to get the win. He ain't going to put himself in harm's way. Silva is one of the most dangerous cats to ever enter an octagon. So it just really shocked me about how people boo Daniel Cormier. I love him on commentary. I love him when he's on the Steve Austin show. I love that he's a pro wrestling fan. I love that he's a class act and he's a badass fighter. I tell you, when a guy goes out there and executes his game plan, and it's a different game plan that he trained for with John Jones, and people start booing, man, I just wonder, do you people actually understand the sport? The sport is to go out there and do whatever technique you need to employ to get a win. And that's exactly what DC said he did in the post-fight interview. It was what it was. Hell, smart man, keeps the belt. Man, let's shift gears. Let's talk about Brock Lesnar going against Mark Hunt. This was a very interesting fight. You never know what you're going to get out of a Brock Lesnar fight, and you didn't know what you was going to get out of this one. Everyone expected it to just be a knockdown, drag-out, a knockout in the first round by either man. Well, I'll tell you what, Brock fought an extremely smart fight. Threw a couple of jabs over at Mark Hunt. Mark Hunt connected on a couple of shots. Brock's left eye was swollen up after the press conference, but basically Brock was all about just staying away from getting hit hard or getting hit flush and take Mark Hunt down and impose his will with some ground and pound. And sure enough, man, going in that third round, he got Mark Hunt down once again and just stayed on top of him and smothered him in dominant fashion. And I'll tell you what, that one shot that Mark Hunt threw, a couple of them, that kind of Brock blocked it with his shoulder, but it kind of careened off and hit him in that left eye, and it shows the power of Mark Hunt for Brock to be able to absorb that punch, get that swelling after that fight, and just keep weathering the storm. But Hunt never really got off. He never really could, as he said in his post-fight interview, he couldn't really get out of first gear. But nonetheless, had he got out of first gear, I don't know, but I just thought he would have been a little bit more aggressive going in that third round. But, man, I was proud and happy for Brock Lesnar to pull out that win, to come in there, 38 and a half years old, to come off a pro wrestling schedule, Here's a little tidbit of information. I was eating dinner with Brock Lesnar about a year and a half ago, and it was right before SummerSlam when they were in Los Angeles, California, and it was myself and Brock, and Brock's wife, Rena, and I believe Paul Heyman was there. Paul Heyman was there. It was us four at dinner, steakhouse. And Brock told me right across the table, he goes, I'd like to fight again. I do want to fight again. And so, man, he told me that back a year and a half ago. Man, I never thought I'd see him fight again, but he said he wanted to fight. And when this fight came up, it still caught me by surprise. But Brock told me he wanted to fight about a year and a half ago, and here it was. And he comes out with a W. The most dominant combat fighter in the history of combat fighting, I guess. The dude can do whatever he wants to. All the championships he's got, from his amateur ranks to the UFC, to the WWE, national championships, all the list of awards that he's accumulated that no one else has been able to do is just simply amazing. And then going into the main event, Miesha Cupcake Tate versus Amanda Nunes. Man, I tell you what, Amanda Nunes, a lot of people, her deal was she can come out aggressive in the first two rounds, very aggressive, but she'll gas towards the latter part of the rounds. And I think Miesha's strategy was to try to weather that storm early on, get her into the third, fourth, fifth round where, Miesha Tate's just that scrapper. She's just always there. You're going to have to just really take her out because she's feisty. She trains hard. She never leaves the gym. She's always there. But Amanda Nunes, super aggressive. Her hands just like laser sharp, was just able to pick apart Miesha Tate, hit her with a couple of big shots, rocked her, and end up submitting Miesha Tate there with basically kind of like a neck crank. Almost went for the choke, but kind of turned into a head crank. And she got the victory. She's the new bantamweight female champion. She got performance of the night for this fight. So I tell you what, who knows what's going to happen next with who's going to face Amanda Nunes? Will it be Holly Holm, or will they move somebody else up there? I know Holly Holm has a fight against the Russian lady. But, man, will Ronda Rousey come back? What will happen from Tate from here? Can she regroup and get another rematch? But a very exciting UFC 200, and I enjoyed that event very, very much. And I thought everybody kicked ass. And once again, a shout out to Brock Lesnar for going out there, and he had a dream that he wanted to fight again. He had a goal. He thought he had unfinished business left to take care of, and I'll be damn sure he went out there and took care of business. Hey, man, they're casting right now for Broken Skull Challenge. I think you can go to BrokenSkullChallenge.com or CMT.com. If you think you've got what it takes to come out there to my place and kick ass, and you want to show what kind of athlete you are, man, fill out the application form, get on Skype, do an interview, and let's see what you got out there, because this is season 4. This is going to be the baddest damn season we've ever had out there, and I can guarantee you that. And that's all I got to say about that. So if you've got any kind of guts and you've got some competitive atmosphere, and if you've got any kind of guts and you've got a competitive attitude, sign up, bring your ass out there, and we'll see what you got. So anyway, my conversation with Chip Foose is standing by. Once again, I wish I would have had a video camera to capture everything that I was seeing and he was talking about, but he's a class act and a genius when it comes to cars. But first, I want to show you guys a little appreciation for supporting all the fine sponsors of the Steve Austin Show, so I can do this for you free. That's right, I do this show free twice a week. And to show my appreciation, I've worked out a special deal with our friends at DollarShaveClub.com/Steve. And I've arranged for them to give new members a month of the Executive Razor for free, just for buying a tube of Dr. Carver's shave butter. So now there's no excuse not to join the millions of others who've already joined the club. DollarShaveClub.com/Steve delivers amazing razors right to your front door for about a third of the price of what those greedy razor corporations charge. That means when you become a member of the DollarShaveClub.com/Steve, you can afford to shave with the fresh blade anytime you want. And we all know how great it feels to shave with the fresh blade. I got the executive blade. And when you pair it with Dr. Carver's shave butter, it's about the smoothest shave money can buy. And that's without breaking your wallet. And Dr. Carver's shave butter ain't your average shave cream. It's a unique formula made with natural ingredients that will leave your skin feeling soft and smooth. So join DollarShaveClub.com/Steve now. And new members who buy a tube of Dr. Carver shave butter get a month of the Executive Razor for free. Take advantage of this special offer today. Go to DollarShaveClub.com/Steve. That's DollarShaveClub.com/Steve.
The Steve Austin Show. The Steve Austin Show.
All right, I'm rolling sound. I'm here in Foose Design, Huntington Beach, California. Legendary car builder, car designer, Chip Foose is standing right beside me. We're both walking around. We're in the shop. Well, we're in the display room right now, and there are two beautiful cars standing in front of us. Chip, what year is the GT40?
The GT40 is a 2006. And the Hemisphere sitting here, we built that. I designed it originally in 1990, and we finished this in 2007.
Okay, now tell me a little bit about this Hemisphere, because I was doing a lot of research on you, looking at YouTube stuff. Adam Carolla and Matt came by. Matt of the CarCast told me to tell you hello. I talked to him yesterday at the gym. So you designed this in 1990 while you were at the Art Center of Design in Pasadena, right?
Correct, and it was a Chrysler-sponsored project. I did the actual purple model that's on the shelf there.
Right.
That was the model I built for Chrysler. It had the fenders on it, and you would recognize the fenders if you had a Prowler sitting here, because that was the initial concept, which was the inspiration for the Prowler. It's not exactly the Prowler, but it was, they asked us to create a niche market vehicle, and I did two separate proposals for them. The example that they gave us was somebody that likes to work out on an exercise bike. Maybe he charges the battery and he's got enough power to get in his electric car and get to and from work. So I did a series of sketches that were, based on that whole theme. But then I took another approach, which was taboo at Art Center, playing with muscle cars and hot rods. And I did this whole presentation, and Tom Gale, who was the president of Chrysler Design at the time, he says, okay, what are you doing over here? I had already given him my first proposal. And I said, well, you asked us to create a niche market, which in my mind, we're also trying to create a customer. Here, I'm catering to a customer that already exists. There are guys, thousands of them, in garages and side yards and shops, trying to take their old muscle car bodies or hot rod bodies and put modern technology into them so they can enjoy them. And why don't we do something for them? And that was the inspiration for the Prowler. And also, you can say that was the inspiration for the Mustangs that exist, Camaros and Challengers, and even the Volkswagen Beetle that exists today. Because I met Jay Mays back then when I did my senior show graduating, and he had asked me to come to Volkswagen and work with him on the Beetle, but unfortunately I didn't make that move. But I'm glad that I didn't, because I ended up going to work with Boyd Coddington, and I ended up turning my hobby into a career.
And that's one of the things about you in doing the research, because so much of what you've done, it's all about family, and it's all about passion. Because I think I'm paraphrasing you, but you basically, you get paid to build hot rods and cool cars, which are really unnecessary, but people are so passionate about their cars, it keeps you in business, so you get to do what you love.
I've said it before. I feel that my career is an extension of my father's. But what's amazing is what I do is 100% unnecessary. The world doesn't need another hot rod. But the greatest thing about it is it's 100% passion-driven.
Right.
That somebody's willing to reach in their pocket and pay for us to build their dream car. That's a dream job.
Hey, let's go back to when you were a kid, because your father's name is Sam, and he had body shop back in the day. Okay, so there's stories that I'm reading. You're 3, and your dad, he ran the body shop during the week, but he built hot rods on a weekend, correct?
Yeah, at the age of 3, he was working for Gene Winfield, who's another well-known, famous custom car builder. So I grew up at AMT down in Phoenix, Arizona. I was born in Santa Barbara. We moved to go to work with Gene, or my dad moved so he could go to work with Gene. And I remember growing up with all these show cars that they were building and seeing these things that were just amazing. And at the age of 3, the coolest thing was I could go to the shop with my dad on the weekend. He was watching me. My mom had my sisters. And the cars that my dad was building, then Hot Wheels would build a Hot Wheel of it, and AMT was building the plastic model kits. So I could walk around with the car that my dad just built in my pocket, and then I could build a plastic model kit of it. And that's what I wanted to do when I went to Boyd's, was bring that same dream after we built a car to have Mattel build it as a Hot Wheel and have a model kit made of it.
So there's always a greater purpose, a bigger picture than the small picture. But go back to those drawings when you're 3 years old. You didn't know what you were doing. Do you still have any of those old drawings, like in a scrapbook or something?
My mom saved them, and I've got a red box at home full of drawings that I did from the age of 3 and on.
Dude, how good are these drawings? Because, and I'm 51. At 3, I was drawing stick figures. I'm still drawing stick figures. And you're drawing masterpieces like this car in front of the hemisphere.
They weren't
and everything else you've created.
Thank you. But they weren't masterpieces then. They were just something that I was passionate about. But my father was a talented artist, and I used to sit next to him. And at the age of 3 is when I started, and he would finish a drawing and leave it on the table for me, and I would copy it over and over and over. But at the age of 7, I met Alex Trembulis, who was a designer. He worked for Aubner and Duesenberg back in the 30s. He was the head of the Thunderbird studio through the 60s. He designed the Tucker. And when I saw his drawings, I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Right.
And he told me about Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, California. He also wrote my letter of recommendation to the school. I still have that letter to this day, and that's what I did. I went to Art Center.
Yeah, but before we get to Art Center, let's go back to when you were 7, and that's when you were working beside your car. And I remember, because there's kind of parallels in our lives, where when you were 7, working beside your dad, and you were hammering on a panel or doing something, as you said in the article, I don't know if I knew what I was doing, but Dad was patient with me and helped me and guided me. I remember me and my brothers walking behind my father. He had a rifle. We were deer hunting. He was perpetually always telling us to be quiet and guiding us along. So your father helped, you chase this, what would become your dream and become your job. So obviously, he was very instrumental in your career. And then at 12, you painted your first car, which is a Porsche 356. How did that turn out?
Well, I did the primer work on it. I didn't actually put the color on it,
okay.
But it was the first time I was working for Gary Powers as, he was my dad's painter, and I was working as his apprentice. So he told me to get the 356 in primer. So I said, you want me to primer the whole thing? The great thing is it didn't have a top on it, so I could reach the top at the age of 12. And it came out great. The great thing about primer is you can sand all those runs off.
Right.
We're just prepping it for the paint job.
But in looking at these cars, just looking at the paint and looking at the stuff that you design, when I was watching one of the YouTube videos of you talking about this front suspension on the hemisphere here, you're into the mechanical aspect of it as well. Do you tune and work on motors? Are you into that part of it?
I don't do a lot of, I can, if somebody puts the block together, I can do everything outside of that. I don't do all the detailed electrical. I hire the best that I can find. I've got them here at the shop. As a kid, I had my 56 pickup, and I could spend a weekend doing mechanical work and get all greasy and dirty. And what I hated about grease is I can't pick up a sandwich and eat it when you got greasy hands. You can have dry paint all over your hands, and you can pick that sandwich up and eat it, and you're not getting it on the sandwich. But if I spent 5 or 6 hours doing mechanical work and then got finished and walked away from the truck, it still looked exactly the same. But if I spent 5 or 6 hours detailing or doing something with the paint job or fixing a dent, and you step back, it made a big difference. And that's what I really enjoyed about the aesthetic part of it. So I really enjoy the aesthetics much more than I do the mechanical part.
Okay, so the guy suggested you go to the Art Center. But before we get to the Art Center, I know you're so into cars. What were your hobbies other than working with your dad in his shop or sketching cars? Were you into organized sports? Were you a good student?
I played football. I ran track. I water skied all the time. I loved going water skiing with, the whole family did that. But, I was like a normal kid.
Well, I was just thinking, man, this guy's a total gearhead, or he only works on cars, because I didn't know anything else about you. Were you a good student?
No.
And see, that's one of the things I want to know, because as creative as your mind is, I wondered how it applied to just textbook stuff.
It's in there. I'm ADHD, and I hyper-focus. That's why I can stay up for 8 days straight to work on a single project. But I can be working on that project, and somebody can walk up to me and start talking to me about something else. I'll fall asleep standing up and catch myself falling over and wake up and just tell them, look, just treat it as if you own it. Do what you need to do. I need to focus on this, get it done, and then I can come and help you on your project. But as a student, it's interesting. I never did any homework, and I got mostly A's, some B's and C's. But, I got through without having to work hard. So I was intelligent enough to remember what they had said, but I needed to be drawing while the teacher was talking to remember what they said.
Really?
If I wasn't drawing, then my mind is off and I'm I'm thinking of other things. But if I'm drawing, I'm looking at something, I retain what I've heard.
That's incredible.
I had to work through that with my wife and let her understand that it's the same thing. So if we're having a conversation and I'm drawing, I'm retaining what she says.
It's not that you're not paying attention to her. You're listening and retaining.
At first, she thought I was just ignoring her, and I said, "Look, I can hear you better if I'm drawing.
Yeah.
If I'm not drawing, then I'm visualizing something else, and you say something, and it'll make me think of something else. I go in a different direction." So, as a student, now that I know what I want to do, it's easier for me to learn. But just sitting in school and they're talking about something, and you're thinking, "Am I ever going to use this in my life?" That's what I remember thinking in high school.
Hey, speaking of your wife, and I want to get to Boyd Coddington here in a little bit. Speaking about your wife, when did you meet her? Because you were in the art center, and then you dropped out, or you didn't have enough money. And
Right.
I guess it was at this time you decided to take the plunge and ask her to marry you, and she said, "No, not until you get a degree." Tell me
That's
about
true.
that.
Well, have you ever heard of progeria?
Yes, I have.
Rapid aging.
I've
So I had
met many
a
kids with
sister,
progeria.
Amy,
Yes.
and she passed away when she was 16 in 1985. I was at Art Center when she passed away.
Could you explain to I know what progeria.
Progeria
to my
is-
listeners, it's basically
It's
you
rapid
age very
aging.
rapid.
Yes. So basically, you're through growing at the age of 3 years old. So Amy, when she was 16, she was 3 feet 2 inches tall, weighed 26 pounds, but she had the heart the size of America. And everybody that met Amy fell in love with Amy, and she was the heart of the family. And it was a big change after she left. And my parents both told me, "Look, we don't have the money to send you back to school." So I dropped out of school, and I ended up taking a job, and I worked with a gentleman, Mark Sternberger and Alon Clenet, and I learned a ton from both of them. And one of the things that we had come up with was, if you have originally back in the 80s when you had your garage door opener, it was just a plastic box that clipped onto the sun visor. Well, we came up with the idea of integrating that into the car electronics, and we patented the idea, and we sold it to Prince Corporation in Holland, Michigan. And Prince Corporation had been trying to hire me away from, which was now, it was called Osher Corporation. Sternberg Clenet had changed the name. And I was thinking about going. I had been dating my wife for a year and a half. We actually went through junior high and high school together, but I didn't know her. I met her 5 years after I had graduated high school. We had been dating for a year and a half. I was working at Osher Corporation. The subject of marriage came up, and she says, "Well, I'm not going to marry you." And I said, "Then what are we doing together?" She says, "Well, I think you have potential."
But where are y'all geographically at this time?
We're in Santa Barbara, California.
Okay.
Yep. And so I said,
When she gave you that answer, what were you thinking?
Well, I asked her, I said, "What do you mean by potential?" She says, "Well, I had started Art Center, but I left. I had been out for 3.5 years." She said, "I want a husband who's got a college degree." And she says, "If you had your college degree, I could see us being married." And I had told you that Prince Corporation was trying to hire me away. So I called up Prince and I said, "Are you serious?" And they said, "Yeah." And I said, "Then make me an offer." They made me an offer, and I thought, okay, with this offer, if I go back there and I'm real frugal, I can save enough money to get back to Art Center in about 3 years. So I accepted their offer, and I told my boss, Alon Clenet, that I was leaving. He asked me why. I told him the whole story. He says, "I'll send you to school now. I'll pay for it, and you give me the 3 years after you graduate." So a month later, I was back at school.
Right.
I went back in, I had started in June of 84. I had gone through January of 86. I left for 3.5 years. I went back in June of 89 and graduated in December of 90. And went back to Osher Corporation. But when I graduated, I had done the model for Chrysler, which was the Prowler inspiration. Well, Boyd Coddington had seen it because I had displayed it at the SEMA show in November. And he asked me to start doing some work for him. So while I went back to Santa Barbara to work with Osher Corporation, I started doing Boyd's design work as a side job. It was just nights and weekends that I was working for Boyd. And I did that for 2.5 years when Osher Corporation basically had run out of work. And they asked me to find something to do. They asked me if I could bring Boyd's work in, and they could bill Boyd. And I said, well, here's the unfortunate thing about that is I've never given Boyd a bill. In 2.5 years,
Right.
It was just my hobby. So if I needed wheels for a car that I was building, Boyd would send them to it. It was just a trade. So I ended up accepting a job at Ford. I had 2 offers, one at Ford and one at Volkswagen to do the Beetle. And I ended up going to Ford, to do this. It was just a short intern. And
in Detroit?
Yes.
Okay.
So I was there for a month, and then I came back, and then I was deciding where I was going to end up going. And I told Boyd that I was leaving. I had been doing his design work, and he made me a better offer than both Ford and Volkswagen. And I accepted it. And like I said, that turned my hobby into a career.
Man, how did you get, I mean, just because it seems like just coming out of a local scene, or with no offense, no resume to speak of, I mean, everybody's recruiting you. So obviously everybody sees a bright future from Chip Foose.
I had a senior show when I graduated from Art Center.
Okay.
And all the different car companies come through, all the presidents of design, and I actually was at my senior show. I had 14 job offers from car companies, but I had given my word that I would go back to Osha Corporation, and Alon Clinet paid for me to go to school, and I went back. And
what did you learn at the Art Center? Because I was sitting there thinking, I was going through the curriculum that they have there. I mean, they've got movie directing, and I'm thinking, okay, graphics, and I was like, no, it's product design.
Yeah, I was in industrial design and specializing in automotive. But it's interesting. I had drawn all my life, but you never know why exactly you're drawing what you're drawing, because basically when you're self-taught, all you're doing is looking at photographs and kind of copying, and then you start doing your own thing. What Art Center really teaches you is what you're drawing. Why is that reflection there? And you learn about basically surface development and how one shape will transition into another shape. And then you learn about what the horizon line does on a reflective surface versus a flat surface, how the glass is. And then you learn how to draw aluminum or chrome or stainless steel and the very subtle differences that you would see when you're actually looking at those products. So they're teaching you why you're drawing what you're drawing, and also all those fine little details that you need to do to communicate your ideas on paper. Back then it was all drawing. Now most designers are working with a computer.
When you look back, I mean, and you don't have time to look back, but if you look back, I mean, do you feel like, or just talking to you now, do you feel like you were destined to be a car designer? I mean, just from your dad, from him being in the business, you taking after him, meeting up with all the men that you just talked about, Boyd, going to the Art Center.
It's interesting. I've thought about it before. I don't ever remember being introduced to the automotive world. I was born into it.
Right.
And it's something that I have been passionate about all my life. I mean, just from the time that I remember, like 3 years old, my dad's working at AMT, just the fact that I could hold that little Hot Wheel of the car that my dad had just built, that was the coolest thing in the world to me. And I wanted to do what my dad did.
How are you when you get away from this place? Because it seems like you'd be a kid in a candy store every day you come to work because it's your passion. Are you one of those kind of guys that can never shut his brain off from a creative standpoint?
I used to be. I would say that Overhaulin cured me of that.
Great. I want to talk about Overhaulin. Before we rolled sound, I was talking to Chip. I was doing all the research. Overhaulin was one of my favorite shows on TV. I have self-diagnosed ADD. Nothing holds my attention, Chip. So if it ain't good, I don't watch it. I loved Overhaulin. And doing the research, I found out that the last show aired on November 18, 2015. I'm like, well, I'm watching reruns, but some of them are new to me, and I still like for me, Overhaulin's kind of like Shawshank Redemption. I might have seen the build before, but because it's so cool, I'll watch it again.
Thank you very much.
Go back to the shutting your mind off.
Well, before I ever did Art Center, and my wife, we got married and we go on our honeymoon, and we went to the little island of Aruba, which is 19 miles long and 6 miles wide. I rented a Jeep one day, and you can cover every mile on the island in about 2 hours. And, she's a sun worshiper. I can't stand sitting in the sun. I'm fair-skinned, and I just burn.
Same thing with my wife. She can sit on the beach all day, and people watch me. I'll be there 15 minutes. I'm an albino. I got to have 50 block on, and I'm bored, so I got to go. Yeah. So what happens?
So I'm down on the beach, and I'm down in the wet sand, and I'm building cars. I had a few cars that I was designing at the time, so I'm down there in the wet sand, and I'm actually making shapes and looking at, okay, I can bring this fender line and this peak down here, and I probably made 15 different sculptures out of the sand, but you got to spend your time doing something, and that's what my passion was. But after Overhaulin, third season was the worst. We did 29 cars in 9 months. That's average finishing a car every 11 days. And after that season, I was pretty burnt out.
Are you burnt? Well, here's my question about this, because I host a couple of shows in the past, and one on CMT right now, Broken Skull Challenge. It takes us about 2 days per episode. Okay, so you're trying to build a car in what would you say, 11 days? Or
well,
7?
No, we were doing them in 8 days straight.
8 days straight.
So if we started on Monday, we finished it the next Monday.
Okay.
And sometimes I would stay up the full 8 days to get those cars done.
Okay, so 8 days per episode, and you've got to build an entire car.
We're doing 3 of those a month. So that's an average of staying up almost 24 days a month for 9 months straight.
So at that point, are you just totally entrenched in the production of that show and fulfilling the episodes, or can you work on any side projects? Your guys are working on something else, or is it all hands on deck working on overall?
I was doing the show, and I was coming back trying to run my shop as well, so I'm going back and forth. So
dude, that'd drive you crazy.
Any of the days, because we'd work for 8 days, and then they'd reset up for the next shoot. While they're resetting up the shop, I'd be here working on my customers' cars, and then I'd just go back to overhauling. But at the end of third season, that was the first time that I remember I could sit down on the couch and enjoy sitting next to my wife watching TV. I never did it before that.
Right. When you look back, because the show ended up running 11 seasons, right?
Well, we filmed for 5 years, and then we took 5 years off, and we filmed for another 3.5. But it's been on the air pretty much every day somewhere globally.
How was your acclimation to being on TV, being in front of the camera? I know you, what was it, Rides? Was it before Overhaul?
Yeah, Rides was before.
So you got your feet wet. But did you enjoy being in front of a camera? Do you miss it now? I mean, it's a grind, but do you miss it?
What I miss is the people that I worked with. You know, it was like every episode was like another, you know, it's like going to your friend's house on Sunday night trying to get his car done so he can drive to school Monday morning. And it was that way for a week straight. And that's what I miss is all the people that I got to work with and all the really talented people that I met doing the show. And I'm actually in negotiations now to possibly do another show. And, I think it'll be enjoyable to get back into it.
It's interesting because one of your things, and I was reading about you, one of your keys to success was don't be afraid to say no. You remember the story I'm going to tell? Because you got approached to be on another show with another personality.
Yes.
You want to tell that story?
Well, when I was at Boyd's, I worked with Jesse James. And he called me one day and he said, hey, he says, Discovery wants to do a television show. He says, I want you to come to a meeting. So they had told me about the first 2 episodes. One was going to be, it was going to be Monster Garage. And they told me that the first episode was going to be taking a Ford Mustang and turning it into a lawnmower and a golf ball retriever. And I thought, wow, that's kind of interesting. And then the second one was take a Ford Explorer and turn it into a trash truck. And I'm thinking, I'm trying to build the most beautiful pieces of rolling art that I can possibly build. Now you're going to put me on television building these monsters that I really didn't see a value to the vehicle after the show. It's just building something, and I didn't want to be known for that. And I said no. Jesse was pretty upset with me, but I think it was the greatest no in business that I've ever said. Because then they sent Bud Brutzman, another producer, and Bud says, Discovery wants to do a show on you. I thought, well, what are we going to do? And he says, I'm going to follow you 24/7. Originally, it was going to be a reality show based on my life. And he says, I'm going to follow you 24/7, what you're doing at work, going home with you, how you interact with the family, and then your next build, we're going to take it to the show. And I said, that's not going to work because, I'm not an actor. I'm a car builder. And I said, what I'm going to be on television is exactly who I am and what I do. But my wife's an attorney, and she's a trained arguer, and I never win a fight with her.
Right.
I didn't want that on air. And I do a lot of things that upset her. So,
yeah, but also when you bring your family into the reality part of it 24/7, it's a little invasive.
Yeah.
And so what kind of family life do you have? Many people have done it. Not my cup of tea either. So how did the final formula for Overhaulin come about?
Well, I'll finish Rides first because originally we were building a 34 Ford that was going to take. We were on the 11 months out from finishing it to go to the Detroit Autorama and compete for the Riddler Award. I said, that's 11 months out. You don't want to follow me for 11 months for one show.
Yeah.
So I said, let me call Jay Mays, who is now the director of design for Ford Motor Company. I'll see if he wants to donate a car that we can build for the SEMA show. Bud says, what's the SEMA show? I said, trust me, that's the show you want to go to Because if you're an automotive fan, no matter what it is that you like, that's where it's going to be. Right. You'll find everything there. So I called Jay. I told him what we were thinking of doing. He says, we're releasing the Thunderbird. I want to send you a new Thunderbird. It's sitting in the shop in the back here, but I built the car that we called the Speedbird. That was a pilot episode of Rides. And while we were building it, the producer kept telling me he wanted to do a series. And I said, well, I don't want this to be my series. And I said, let's do something where we're building a car, in a week's time, like what they were doing in Monster Garage. But I thought we can do this in the automotive world as well. But we went ahead and we finished, it was in one ear and out the other with Bud because he was focused on rides.
Right.
But we finished it, Discovery loved it, and they came back to him and said, okay, and they ordered a series. So he comes back, he says, they ordered a series. What are we doing next? And I go, no. I said, here's what I'm going to do for you. I said, I had about killed myself. We built that car in 7 weeks. I did 6 weeks with no sleep. I basically started working 40 hours straight, and then I'd sleep for 8, and I'd work 40 and sleep for 8. I did that for 6 weeks. I did the last 6 days with no sleep. I lost 27 pounds building that car, but we got it to the show. I did not want to fail, and fear of failure is a motivator.
Yes.
So we finished it, and he says, what are we doing next? And I said, I'm not doing that again. So I gave him a list of 25 hot rod shops that I knew, the owners, and I said, call every one of these guys and see when they're starting their next project. You can send a film crew once a week or once a month to their shops, and if they're building a car and in 10 months, you've got 25 episodes. And that's where Rides came from.
Gotcha.
I didn't realize I should have owned it at the time.
Right.
I gave him the idea. But I said, let's build cars for guys. I knew there were cars in garages and side yards. Let's go get those cars and build them and give them back to them. Well, Bud, that was my childhood, building cars with my dad.
Yeah.
Bud's childhood was spent being a little mischievous, and he says, okay, let's steal these cars and prank the owners. He brought that into the picture. He presented the idea to Discovery, and they ordered 7 episodes right off the bat. And that's where it came from.
How did you guys end up with Chris Jacobs? Because the chemistry with you guys is great. He's not necessarily a car guy. He's a host, but great dynamic here. How did you bring him in?
Chris is an amazing guy, and he was perfect for doing all.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But Bud and his production company, they went ahead and did all of the testing of all the different hosts, and and what's interesting is Bud thought that Chris and Courtney were going to be the stars of the show, and I didn't even have a contract.
Really?
I was just a guy that, he'll use me until he was done, and then he'd go on to somebody else. So I didn't have a contract at all. He just, he asked me if I'd do the first season. I said yes. Then he comes back to me. He says, okay, we got a second season. And I said, I'm not interested in doing it because I about killed myself doing the first ones for no money, basically.
I get it. Because I've been there. Holy smokes! Who would have figured?
Then we ended up doing a contract, and we got rolling.
Okay, so who comes into play on that? Were you just because you spent so many hours doing it, or did your wife say, her being the trained arguer and the brains, she said, hey, we got to do something here on the business side because you're more than just this guy working on a show?
Well, actually, Discovery found out that I didn't have a contract, and that's when there's the term, the stuff hit the fan.
Yes.
That's what happened. Then everything changed right away.
Okay, I was online and I was looking at the submission forms to how to get on Overhaulin. Mm-hmm. So tell me about a little bit of that process. I mean, because I'm sure it was the people at Discovery or production, basically casting. I mean, what kind of stories? Because so much of, and I think since you're a car guy, as well as I am, but I just don't have any mechanical or painting, no kind of skills. I just love cars. But people love cars. So to me, it was interesting to see the story behind the people that own the cars.
I always said that Overhaulin was a people show, that the cars were just a catalyst to tell their story.
Right.
And what I really wanted was a guy that maybe inherited his grandfather's or his father's car, or a girl that inherited, a family member's car, but there was some history to, that car had been in the family for a long time. And if we could build that car and build what they wanted, and one of the other things I always try to do is turn the interior into a time capsule. So if they were riding around that car when they were 4 years old, I wanted to put the interior right back to what they remembered it. So when they got into it, it was like, this is exactly what I was riding around with Grandpa in. It's just that emotional contact. It was interesting working with Jay Mays at Ford and doing some of the heritage cars that we did, the Legends. I had said to Jay, I said, what's interesting about the opportunity that we have, because it's not today's designer's fault that a designer in the past chose to go away from a great form. You look at a 67 Mustang, that was a great form. And then 67 and 8 were the same. 69 was completely different. And then you go all the way up into the 70s, you had these funny little Mustangs. There wasn't an evolution of a body design like you see with a Porsche or a Corvette. And I had said to Jay Mays, I said, we can go back in time and pick great body styles and evolve those to go forward. And that's what it was all about. That's what the Camaro is about, the Mustang and the Challenger. And, it's that emotional heartstring that when somebody sees that car and it reminds them of what they were around in, riding around with their father or their grandfather or mother,
right.
That's the heartstring, that attachment that can equal a sale.
Here's a question. So you've got these episodes to film. You're building, man, some of these cars that were brought in are in really bad shape. And you're working a major miracle on them in 7 days. What's the story on the cost of the build? Is production eating that? That was a part of the cost per episode?
Yeah, because we were paying the guys that were on the show, and we just knew we needed to get things done. And it wasn't hourly somebody getting paid. It was you were paid to do the episode.
Right.
And so whatever it took to get that done, that's what we were doing. But the average cost of building one of those cars, we put about $120,000 to $140,000 into each car.
Jesus. Man, that's unbelievable.
With all of the stuff that was sponsored as well.
Right.
But there was we did an episode at Wyotech, and we did a 56 Chevy. It was a 4-door sedan. We cut it up and made it into a 2-door, basically a roadster.
Yeah.
And I kept track of the hours. And if you had a basic shop rate of $50 an hour, I remember it was $310,000 of hourly shop rate in the work that we had done to that car, to get it done that quick. So it's interesting because I'll have a lot of other shop owners say, you're killing it for me because these customers come in and they expect me to get it done for them in a week. So I had figured that out just so I could tell them, okay, then tell them that you're going to bring in 35 people and you're going to start charging your shop rate. And when it gets into overtime and double time and all that, it's going to be about $310,000 worth of just labor to get that car done.
Hey, what does it take? Because we're here in the showroom, and we've got the Hemisphere, and we've got the GT40 Ford sitting in front of us. But here in the garage or in the shop, which we'll go here in a little bit, and you can show me around. What does it take to get a car into your shop here? I mean, will y'all work on anything, any mundane vehicle, or does it have to be something crazy custom?
No, we do. Like right now, we've got a 56 pickup in here that we're just doing an engine swap. The owner lives here in Huntington Beach, and he wants to take his truck to New Zealand. And the laws in New Zealand, you cannot have anything that's fabricated or aftermarket go into the country. And this had some really awkward-looking, looked like somebody had built them in the barn, motor mounts that were welded to the frame. We cut all that stuff off. We got a new motor and transmission and all new drivetrain. But we went ahead and we fabricated some motor mounts that look like the original factory motor mounts. But nothing's just welded or tacked. Everything is bolted and looks like this is how it should have come from the factory so that he can get that into New Zealand. So we'll build things that look stock, or we'll build something completely from scratch. And it doesn't matter. If you're passionate about cars, if we hit it off, we're going to build something for you.
Well, check it out. How do you find the guys that you've got working in this shop? Because I would imagine if they're working for you, they've got to be good. How did you find them? How long have they been here?
Well, I've got a couple guys here that started working together. Andy and Petey started at Boyd's in 1980. They've been working together side by side. I started working there in 1990 with Boyd's, so the three of us have been working together since 1990. And I had some other guys, but what's interesting is when I went to Boyd's, I was the young guy. So the guys that ended up coming to work for me when we started Foose Design, I've had 3 guys retire from here. And, they're getting up in age, and we're all getting up there. But I've got some younger guys that are really talented. I met some guys when I was on Overhaulin. I met other guys that just came in and asked for a job, and I recognized their name and some of the cars that they had worked on when I looked at their resume. Right. And, I'll give somebody a shot. But number one, the passion has to be there before the talent. Because I think passion for this industry will take you a lot further than talent if you don't have the passion.
Right. Okay, and on that note, speaking of passion for design, I want to talk a little bit more about Boyd Coddington and some of the other design work that you do that might actually surprise some people. But before we do that, let me say a quick word of thanks to the sponsor of this podcast and to all the listeners who support them. And to show my appreciation, I'm going to help you guys out with another special deal. Hey, guys are dumb. I say this all the time, and I'm just speaking the truth, and I'm including myself as well. Guys are dumb. And if you screwed something up lately and your girl ain't too happy with you, I'm going to smarten you up right now. Send her some flowers from thebooks.com. Books flowers are grown at eco-friendly farms on the side of a volcano. Yeah, that's right. I said a volcano. And the Books flowers are absolutely gorgeous. You never thought you'd hear me say gorgeous. The blooms are larger and the colors are more vibrant. So say sorry for screwing up with hand-delivered flowers from thebooks.com. And it won't break your bank either. Books prices start at just $40, and delivery is free when you register with thebooks.com. And we're going to go one step further. We'll cover one of your screw-ups on us with free flowers. Just email your screw-up story to helpmebooks@gmail.com. That's helpme, BOUQS, @gmail.com. We'll choose one winner at random. But if you don't win the free flowers, or if you have more than one screw-up to cover, then take advantage of this special offer. You can get 20% off the bouquet of your choice. Just go to Books.com and enter the promo code Steve. That's BOUQS.com and use the promo code Steve. All right, speaking of working at Boyd's, Boyd Coddington, famous car builder, that shop goes out of business.
Yeah.
And so, man, that's when, as a car designer or a car builder, all of a sudden you just look at what's on the showroom or you see guys doing miraculous things with cars. That's cool. But there's the business dynamic of it. So with Boyd's going out of business, you decided to start your own shop. How long did it take you to build up the business acumen? And, I think you and your wife, well, this was an interesting thing because basically she gave you a brown paper bag and there was something in this bag.
Yeah, it was interesting. The last day of Boyd's, it was heartbreaking for me. Because that's like, I had been there for 5 years, and that was like a family to me. And Boyd and I were really close as well. He was like a second father to me. And I didn't realize how much my relationship with Boyd was actually hurting my dad until it was over. But Boyd's went bankrupt in 1998, and we all went our separate ways. But the last day, I remember, I had loaded everybody's toolboxes into their trucks, and they had left. And my wife was coming to see me because we had, it was the Good Guys Pleasanton Street Rod Nationals were coming, or there was an event up in Pleasanton.
Yeah.
And everybody was coming into town from all over the country. I had some hot rodder friends. And we were all going to go up to Charlie Sheen's car collection and check it out that night. So my wife was coming to pick me up because we lived south, but Charlie's was up north. So she was picking me up so we could join everybody. And when she got there, I was already emotional thinking that, this is it. It's over. But now Boyd's had, it took a little while before it went bankrupt. I never got paid for my last 7 weeks of work. I only had $1,600 and some dollars in the bank, or I'm sorry, I had $700 in the bank, but I had a house payment coming in of $1,600 and something in 2 weeks. Yep. Didn't know how I was going to even make that house payment. My wife comes up to pick me up, and I get in the car so we can leave. She says, before we go, I have something for you. And she handed me a brown paper bag. And I open that bag, and I pull out a tiny little T-shirt that says, I love Daddy. And wow, that slapped me in the face. I was excited.
Because your wife is saying she's pregnant, and you ain't got a job.
And we had been trying for 4 years.
Oh, wow.
So, with all the infertility and whatnot, or, going through all the drugs and whatever it took. But we finally got pregnant, but I couldn't even make a house payment. I didn't have a job. and that was 1998. It's been a roller coaster ride ever since, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. My wife's my partner, and she's the reason that we're successful.
So was this, and you started right down the road, and then you ended up buying this place?
Yeah, what we did is, when Boyd's went bankrupt, I ended up, every car that I had in the shop, I found a shop for that car to go to, and the guy that was in the shop working on it, he got a job at that shop. And then I went to the shop just to help get the cars finished. So I was bouncing around to about 7 different shops trying to get all these cars finished, and I wasn't charging for my time. But I had one customer that wanted me to finish his car, so I brought that to my house, and that was Ron Whiteside, his 34 Coupe that we ended up winning the Riddler with in 2003. And, it was interesting. I worked out of my garage. I was doing design work. I was traveling. And in 99, I started a little shop in Orange, and I was in there for about 6 months before I moved here to Huntington Beach and rented the first stall on the end. And it's just grown ever since then.
But weren't Ford and Dodge or Chrysler or other companies like that trying to get at you to do some design work for them?
Nobody was hiring at that time. I called everybody, and they're all, well, it's not our season to bring anybody in. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just trying to do it. And then my first job was with Precision Power Inc. That's a speaker and amplifier company. And I learned a lot working with them. One of the guys that I worked with at Boyd's had left and gone to work there. I had helped him to get to Arizona. I gave him some money to get home. And he called me up and he asked me what I was going to do. And I said, I have no idea. So he says, well, how would you like to design PPI's entire line of 99 product? And I said, will they pay a royalty on it? And he says, let me get back to you. So he got back to me. He says, yeah, they'll do that. I said, okay. Then we worked out the royalty differences, and I said, I want an advance on royalties to do the design work. So the first week that I was out, I got a check for $10,000, and that's how we started the shop.
So what were you designing?
I was designing all their speakers, their amplifiers, all their electronics.
Dude, here's the thing I don't get about you. It's crazy to see all the car work you do, but to hear the speaker design, and you've also designed, I think, tennis shoes and sunglasses for
yes, with Oakley.
Mm-hmm. You design anything?
Done a casino, the Motor City Casino in Detroit.
I saw that.
Yeah, the hotel and casino. I got to design that project. That was a blast.
It looks like it was a blast.
Mm-hmm.
Were they happy with it?
Yes, they were very happy. It's opened the doors to a lot of other projects too.
Okay, so speaking of other projects, I mean, just what is a day in the shoes of Chip Foose like today? Because we're in this badass, beautiful facility. I mean, it's great. You got to come by here because it's open. You got the T-shirts and stuff for sale here, but it's a really, really beautiful facility. There's all kinds of cool cars hanging around. You get up every day. Are you more business-oriented, like in taking care of the things you're doing with Ford, Dodge, or whoever, or is it design work, or you probably don't have time to be in the garage slugging out with the guys?
I still love working with the guys. That's my number one thing. So, when we're done, I'm going to be over. I'm going to show you a 39 Cadillac that we're working on, and I'm going to get right on the moldings and fitting the top. Because we got to get that done. This car needs to be finished on July 21st. We're going to unveil it at the Peterson Museum, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But that's still my passion, is getting into the shop and building. So
hey, man, a few of the cars that I've seen, and of course, right out there in the dang driveway is a lime green Pantera. God dang, I love that color. I love the Pantera. Is that a 71?
That's a 71. It's an original push-button car.
Yep.
Which is the door handle is a push-button.
Yeah.
Only the first 75 Panteras that came to the States had the push-button cars. They're hand-built, and that was in the original De Tomaso factory, or not the factory, but the shop, where they were hand building where they did all of the Mangustas. Mm-hmm. They were building the Panteras. When Mercury asked them to build the Pantera as a production car, that's when they started building the factory that they were doing the assembly line in. Well, Mercury needed cars before they had the assembly line done, so they were taking the hand-built cars with the round door handle as delivery first, finishing those, and then the assembly line got started, and a few things were changed on the assembly line. The doors are different. They don't have the push button, and they don't have the cast upper door frame that bolts in. That's basically out of solid brass and bolted onto the door. They had a steel piece that was welded into the door with stainless trim that snapped over it. So there's a couple of subtle differences in the first 75 Panteras that came to the States. And that's why I bought that car, is because it's one of the originals.
What is the difference? Motor question. 351 Cleveland, 351 Windsor.
What's
Cleveland. The difference?
Well, one was built in Cleveland and one was built in Windsor, Canada.
That's the only difference?
Well, there's subtle differences in the casting.
Okay.
And the Cleveland is actually a stronger motor.
Okay, well, that's what I always heard, but I didn't know the difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is it about the Pantera? I'm a big fan of it. Why do you love that car so much? You've built a bunch of them.
Well, there's another one in here that I'll show you in a minute.
Is that the red one y'all showed?
Yeah, the red one that my father built in 1975. That was a Pantera that went off a 750-foot cliff that was watered up into a ball. And he bought that car, for his customer, cut the body off and built this car that you see sitting in the shop here. And I remember just looking at Panteras as a kid when they first came out, thinking that thing looked like a rocket ship back then. And I always liked it. I ended up building one for myself last year, and we had it at SEMA in the MagnaFlow booth. I brought it back from SEMA, and I had a guy call me in Colorado. He wanted the car, so I ended up selling it to him.
Right.
But I really didn't want to sell it, but he offered me enough money that I knew I could go out and find an original push button. I had turned mine into a push button. I found the parts and made some pieces to make it into one. Now I have an original one.
You got to have a million connections because you've been doing this for so long. Here's the thing. Dang, Chip, you're 52, but at age 31, you got inducted to the Hot Rod Hall of Fame?
Yes.
Youngest person ever.
Youngest member in the Hot Rod Hall of Fame.
Or did you think at 32, well, I got in the Hall of Fame, I just go do something else for a living? How cool was that?
It was very cool just to be, inducted into the Hall of Fame with the likes of Boyd Coddington and Little John Butera and all of the icons that are my heroes in this industry. But, it doesn't pay the bills.
You're right about that. Hey, before you take me on a tour of the shop, and if you can give me 15 minutes on the back end, there's a 2006, correct?
Yep,
Ford GT40 standing right here in the showroom. And back in the day, me being the car guy that I am, I wanted to buy one of these, but I was too cheap to buy one. I thought they were going right at the time at about $150. But my point is, you bought this car secondhand. This car, when you got it,
had 346 miles on it when I got it.
And now it has about
1,400.
Okay, but there's some things that you designed on this car. What did you design?
Actually, I got to give credit to my wife for this car being here because I originally had worked out a deal with one of my customers. I was going to buy it, and we agreed on a price. 2 weeks later, I went back to him with the money, and he raised the price, and I decided, no, I'm not going to buy that. Well, my wife took the money and went and got it for me because originally I was supposed to get another one, and she wouldn't let me buy it. And she didn't want it to get away from me a second time.
Hey, man, that begs the question. You're Chip Foose. You can build anything that you want, but there's obviously cars that you love, like the Panteras, the green one, the red one in the back. I'm about to see. We got Hemisphere. But is there a Chip Foose car collection? I would think that you have 20 or 30 cars.
Well, one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about this car is I always wanted to build one as a kid. And I've been involved with Ford Motor Company, and I can't tell you what my involvement was with this car,
right,
but that's the reason that it's here. I
awesome.
really do love this car, and my wife didn't want it to get away from me, and I'm glad she didn't. So I'm proud to own it.
Hey, what is it like to drive this thing? Because I've heard just the sight, the rear view sight, maybe is not so great. The back one is kind of small. There's this.
When you're doing 170 miles an hour, you don't care what's behind you unless it's a cop.
Never mind. Dumb question. Hey, shoot, let's go into the back, show them around the shop. It's going to be too loud, so I'll shut it down. Do you have 15 more minutes for me?
I sure do.
All right, we'll come right back with Chip Foose. Man, I'm having a blast here at Foose Design. Hey, y'all know that I couldn't do this podcast for you if it wasn't for the sponsors, and that includes Diamond Dallas Page and DDP Yoga. And Dallas and his crew are the ones who put together the Resurrection of Jake the Snake documentary, and this is one badass documentary. But you ain't got to take my word for it. The stats don't lie. Right now, The Resurrection of Jake the Snake is the 6th highest-rated documentary of all time on Netflix. And when you check it out on Netflix, be sure to give it a rating yourself. And you can also get the documentary on Blu-ray and DVD now. And the collector's edition comes with 20 bonus features, including a commentary track narrated by Dallas, Jake, and director Steve Yu. So just go to ddpyoga.com/Austin to get The Resurrection of Jake the Snake, Collector's Edition, DVD or Blu-ray, along with your own copy of the DDP Yoga program. And if you do it now, you'll save 20% off your order. DDP is giving you guys a once-in-a-lifetime deal right now. You heard me right. You'll get 20% off anything you buy at ddpyoga.com/Austin. Don't miss your chance to try DDP's life-changing DDP Yoga program. This is more than just a workout. This is a way to live a healthier life. DDP gives you everything you need, and all you got to do is commit. So get The Resurrection of Jake the Snake documentary. Get yourself on the DDP Yoga program and do all that for 20% off by going to ddpyoga.com/Austin. That's ddpyoga.com/Austin and get 20% off anything you buy for a limited time. All right, just come back from the grand tour of the whole shop here. Holy smokes. Dude, there's more work going on in here than just a little bit, and there's some badass cars back there.
Thank you
One of
very
those
much.
cars has been here for 3 years.
Yeah, we're doing a 39 Cadillac right now for Wes Rydell that started life as a 4-door sedan, and we're turning it into a 2-door removable hardtop. It'll look like a folding convertible, but it's just a aluminum shell that's wrapped in canvas, and it'll have bows on the inside. But, we started that project 3 years ago, and it went back to Wes's for about 6 months, and they were going to do some work back at his shop. They ended up not getting anything done. He called me up and said, I'm just going to send it to you and have you finish it. So it came back, and we built the complete chassis underneath it, and we're finishing it up. We got to have that car done July 21st now.
So now there's a timeline on it. I mean,
Yes.
But some of these people, when they do these amazing builds, like what was the car you said in there?
We had the Impression that we
The
did.
Impression.
And
How
the
long did
Imposter.
that take?
The Impression was a 6-year build.
And so people know that coming in, right?
Oh yeah. It's you never know how long it's going to take, but when we're busy on other cars, like if somebody came in right now and said, I want this car, well, we're busy on that Cadillac. So I'll bring it in and I'll do a little bit of work on it, and then we might start building the chassis and getting things started. But we're finishing the cars that came in front of it. So
Right.
the reason it takes so long is I'm not going to bring a whole nother crew in and start building a bigger shop to build another car. I want to keep the crew that I have that I know is talented, so we can build the quality that we want to build and keep them busy on one car at a time, basically. We usually have about 3 or 4 cars going, but we're focusing on one car. So as we get the next 3 done, the car that comes in next, that'll be the one that we're all focusing on. That's the reason it'll take so long, is we've got to get the things finished that were here before this car.
Hey, one question I've got to ask you, and I'm going to refer some of you guys to YouTube to check out this car. It won the Riddler Award, and it was a 65 Chevy Impala that you ended up shortening 17 inches. And you put that on a C7 Corvette frame.
Yeah, overall, that car was about 16 and a half, 17 inches shorter than a stock 65 Impala. Body-wise, we took 14 inches out of mostly the rear quarter. We took 7 off the back, 7 out of the center. We also took 8 inches out of the roof line and laid the windshield back. But when we shortened the quarters, we also pulled the C-pillars forward, those sail panels, and then we chopped it about 1.25 inches. But the biggest thing of all the work on that car was the underside of it, because originally that was for Don and Elma Voth. Don wanted to build a car for his wife, and I thought, and we had the conversation. I said, if we're going to put your wife in a car, let's not put her in a hot rod that, if a guy's driving a hot rod and he has a problem, he can pull off to the side of the road and wait for a tow truck, and he's going to get it home, and we're going to fix it. You put a woman in that situation, she's going to come home yelling and screaming and never want to get into it again.
Right.
So I said, let's take a brand new Corvette and we'll drop this Impala body over it. That's where we get the Imposter name, because it's a Corvette in Impala clothing. But we wanted to reproportion it a bit. We used everything from that Corvette underneath. Every single electric motor, everything that's in a brand new Corvette is in that Impala. That was so we could build a bulletproof driver for his wife. We got the body on the car, and then he started saying, hey, let's go to the Riddler with it, which...
Explain what the Riddler Award is.
Well, the Riddler is the Detroit Autorama, which is a car show every year. They give an award away called the Riddler Award, and it's the Don Riddler Memorial Award. Don Riddler is the one that started this show. He passed away in the 60s, and after he had passed, they started doing the Riddler Memorial Award. And it's the most sought-after award in hot rodding. So Don wanted to compete for that, and originally I told him, not with this car. We didn't build this to be a show car like that. We built it to be a driver for his wife. If you were thinking about building a car for the Riddler Award, you wouldn't go buy a brand new car from the dealership and come in and start modifying it. You build everything from ground up to be a piece of art. So what took so long on that car was flipping that car over and addressing every single production part underneath it to be a piece of artwork. We rebuilt everything under that car, but used the original parts. So if she wanted to drive it and she had a problem, you can pull into a GM dealership, plug it into the computer, it'll tell you what part to replace it, and she can be back out on the road. It is a brand new Corvette with the Impala body on it.
It was phenomenal, the way you pulled off, the way you said you cut it down and you laid the windshield back. Biggest thing, well, one of the things that was so stand out was just the color of the paint, along with the extensive work, of course. What color would you call that paint? It's absolutely sickening. I loved it.
Thank you. I called it Impression Light and Impression Dark, or Imposter Light and Imposter Dark. It was just something that we made up.
Okay, but here's the thing. I mean, like, if I wanted to bring a car and say, hey, Chip, paint this car the same color you painted the Imposter, can you recreate
I can do that.
paint?
Yes.
Or would that ever become a PPG paint or what?
It's BASF. We work with Glazeret, and it's 90 line water base. And if you call BASF, they have the formula as well. And if you didn't call them, you can call us, and I'll give the formula to somebody if they wanted to paint their car that.
Right. One of the things I was researching about you, you're walking around showing the shop off, and in the corner was a 54 Corvette that belonged to your wife.
Yes.
Have you ever completed that Corvette? Because it was on your list of things to do. I got to ask you about your wife's Corvette.
No, I have not finished her Corvette yet. In fact, I have since inherited another one that I want to build. It's out in the front driveway right now. But I haven't finished the Corvette, but I'm almost done with all the metal work on a 32 Ford Roadster with a rumble seat that I was building for my wife. I wanted to get that one out of the way first.
Okay, so when are you going to get on the Vet? Soon?
I will probably be on the Vet in about 8 months from now.
What are you going to do to that car? Just make it just look like a 54 Corvette?
I've already done a complete Morrison chassis underneath it, so it's got all modern suspension, modern brakes. I've put a ZZ430 motor in it. It's got a 700 R4 4-speed automatic transmission, and I want to paint it kind of a silver champagne, a warm silver, almost the color of the Speedbird.
Right.
And I want to make it look like this was a show car done in the early 50s, big wide whites and big wheel on it. But I just want to make it that really refined 50s elegant show car feel and give it to my wife.
Here's a question. Your wife's a lawyer. She helps you run a business, and she does her thing. Is she a car person, per se?
No.
No.
I'm a car person, and I want to force her into this.
No, but technically she's not a car person?
She loves it once we're going someplace, but it's funny, she'll say, hey, let's take, I've got several cars, but like my 56 pickup. Well, let's take the truck and go get dinner. I go, well, I really don't want to leave that out in the parking lot. I don't mind taking it if we go to an event somewhere and we can keep our eye on it. Or if we go to a restaurant and I'm trying to park it where I know when we're in the restaurant I can keep my eye on it. Yeah. She hates that. It drives her crazy. And she'll go, if we're not going to use it, get rid of it.
Yeah, but are you one of those people that are you this guy that whatever kind of car it is, and sometimes the car warrants it, they'll park diagonally and they'll take up 2 spaces. Sometimes that really chaps my ass. But if it's a badass car, I get it. But when it's a piece,
I really don't do that. And it's funny. Even as a kid, my 56 pickup was everything to me.
Right.
And I remember one day I went out to lunch with all my buddies, and while we were in the restaurant, somebody hit my truck. We came out after we ate, and the front fender was damaged. And I just said to everybody, okay, I'm taking you home. I dropped everybody off. I went straight back to the shop. I had it fixed, painted. I didn't polish it, but I had it all painted for that night when we went out again. So nobody could tell it was damaged. It just had a little bit of orange peel in there that I took care of later.
What do you drive for a daily driver? Because, man, you know me. I've got a 95 Ford Bronco as my baby. Now, I love that thing, and I'll never sell it. It's just stock paint. It's white and silver. But if someone ships it, if they open up their door, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it, but I love that vehicle. It's got 40,000 original miles. What do you drive every day?
All these cars are going to get damaged, and I understand that. So I'll, even though my wife wants me to take the cars out and use them, I'll take the cars out and we'll go and enjoy them. And I've gotten better about it.
Right.
But my daily driver is that silver Ford F-150 right out there.
Okay.
And it's stock. It still has stock wheels on it, tires, everything. I haven't done anything to it, but I enjoy it because I can hide in it. When I take my hot rods out on the freeway and everybody's trying to get a picture with of your car, and then you're like, holy smokes, they're going to run me off the road. So unfortunately, I don't drive a modified car every day now like I used to.
I was going to drive my 95 Ford Bronco up here and see what kind of tricks you could do on it, but I drove
Make it fly.
You know what? We might use that Imposter silver on it. But I drove my Range Rover because it's nice to be in LA traffic and new technology. Because when I left, I was coming from Marina Del Rey, and my wife tells me, I'm a time fanatic and I'll never be late. She says,
Is
aren't
she
you
into cars?
Oh, yes. She had a 65 Ford Mustang.
Oh, sweet.
And I said, if we ever do the 65, I said, we got to do a 68 because the pony car is just a little tight.
Yeah.
So in the 68, it was...
I love the 67 and 8s.
Yeah, 67, the bullet car. So anyway.
And also Gone in 60 Seconds.
Gone in 60 Seconds.
You know, I did those.
Yeah, I know. You built the Eleanor car.
Yeah.
You didn't design it, but you built it.
The original design was done by Steve Stanford.
Right.
And then Jeff Mann, who was the art director, asked me if I could build 15 cars in 4 weeks. And I said, we'll give it a shot. We finished 4 cars in the 7 weeks and then delivered 2 cars a day. And I worked with Ray Claridge at Cinema Vehicle Services to get them all finished. But Steve had his original drawings, and I turned them into production drawings and built all the parts. Clay modeled it with C-Tech that was down here in Irvine, and we built and delivered all the parts to Ray Claridge, and we finished all those cars. So Steve did the initial theme. I did the actual production design.
Hey, when you get out on the highway in one of your cars, I mean, one of the points I was making in driving that new car was just California drivers, and drivers in general, no one can drive anymore. How are you on the highway? If you're driving something nice and everybody's cutting you off, or it's just traffic is traffic. I got here early. My point was I got here early so I could cool down a little bit and have a nice composed interview with you.
You just go with the flow. And I can do either. I can drive like all of them, or I can just cruise. And when I'm in a nice car, I just cruise. When I'm in my daily driver, or last night coming home from Santa Barbara, I was up in Santa Barbara, and I needed to get to USC to see my kid, and I needed to be there before 10, but I didn't leave Santa Barbara until 8:30, and I was on the gas to get there. So I was one of these LA drivers last night.
Hey, one other thing you also do is you build bicycles.
Yes, I do.
Do you sell them or what?
I have sold a few of them, but it's just, when I was 12 years old, I had my own bike shop in the side yard of my parents' house. And I was putting nails in the fence to hang the parts, and I broke a couple of the fence posts, or the fence of the grape stakes. And my dad came out and he looked at that one day and he says, "This weekend, all these parts are out of here. You're done." But I've always liked bikes, and as you can see, if you walk around the shop, I've got quite a few bikes. But I love the old bikes. And the oldest bike I have is this 1884 Columbia Pope high wheel that I've got. And I just repainted that actually in lacquer and restored the bike. And I haven't ridden it yet, but I look forward to riding it. There's quite a few bikes here. And I used to have more, but my wife says, what is it with the bikes? Get rid of them.
But where do you find them at?
You find them all over the place. And there's,
You ain't got time to get on Craigslist or eBay. I mean, I know you have all of your automotive connections.
The weekends are for me if I'm not on a deadline. And at Harder Stadium in Long Beach, they have the bicycle and motorcycle swap meet every month. And a lot of times I'll get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'll run down there, and I'll just walk through, and if I find something, I'm done, and I'm out of there by 7:30 in the morning.
Right.
And I just spend a couple hours mostly what I like doing is just walking around and looking at stuff. But I know some guys that are into bikes, and like the high wheel I got from a friend of mine that has an antique bike shop in Orange. And he wanted to let that go, so I picked that up, and I traded a couple other bikes to him. But probably one of the rarest bikes I have is this Elgin Bluebird, the maroon bike that's up here.
Right.
That's a 1936 Elgin Bluebird, and there are only 40 known to exist.
Is that a light on the front of it?
Yes, it is.
Really?
Now, the green bike right behind it, that's a 1918 Harley-Davidson truss frame.
Oh.
That's a pretty rare bike as well. And then right behind that, that's a 1916 Indian bicycle. So I've got a few
How
rare
long have you had
pieces.
these things?
I've had them for about 4 or 5 years. Those two, the Indian and the Harley. The Elgin Bluebird, I think I've had for about 3.5 years. The blue bike right in front of the Elgin, that's a complete handmade bike. I designed that frame and built that all from scratch.
Who does your neons for you? You got a neon guy?
Well, that RM neon light came from BASF.
Okay.
It's the RM paint. There's another one over here that's actually my signature that you met Carson Lev, my agent.
Yep.
He made that as a Christmas gift for me a couple years back.
Hey, man, I see this porcelain enamel Coca-Cola sign. I have the exact same sign.
That's an original.
Yeah, I got one just like it. My mom got me collecting Coca-Cola stuff way back in the day. That was my latest acquisition. You've got the cooler over here up on top of the roof over there.
Mezzanine
Do you collect Coca-Cola stuff or just like old stuff?
There's a whole cooler there, and I've got a bunch of stuff at home too. I just like old stuff.
Right.
And what I really like about it is the fact that in the old days, they built things to last forever. And today, they build a car that lasts for 5 years, and you got to replace it.
Right.
But the older cars, the cars that I call the hard part cars, are chrome bumper cars. Anybody that's a craftsman can restore those cars. You can put everything back together.
Right.
And that's what I really liked about early American products, is they were built to last a lifetime.
Man, I tell you what, we took a little break a while ago when we shut the podcast off, and I can't remember all the things we covered, but we went back in the shop, and there's 5 or 6 or 7 cars. There's some badass trucks. There's another Pantera, and I was watching all the Chips describing everything that they were doing over there, and I need a camera to really give you this information. But anyway, just to see what you guys do here is just unbelievable, because it's one thing to watch it on YouTube and it's one thing to see it on a picture, but when I watch you and hear you explain it, it's like, and then you made that by hand. My brain doesn't even work like that. But I'm standing right in front of this rack of wheels. So you designed all these wheels.
Yes.
What were any of these wheels, like I told you earlier, I had a 71 Firebird Formula, so Krager Super Sports on all 4 corners. When you're designing a wheel, what are you trying to think of?
Well, when I'm designing a wheel, usually I'm designing for a specific car, and there may be an element in that car that in my mind is the detail of that car. I might take that detail and think about how can I turn that into a spoke, and then multiply it throughout the wheel and come up with a theme. Other times I'm just sketching wheels for if I'm on an airplane flying somewhere, you're going to be on that plane for 3-4 hours, I'm drawing wheels, because it makes time go by really quick, and I'll get a lot of ideas. And you never know where a great idea is going to come from. I can just be flipping through a magazine, see something, I can turn that into a wheel design. And that's where they all come from, is whether I'm building a car or just sketching wheels, but coming up with new ideas that I think might sell.
How popular are the wheel sales? I mean, are these online at chipfoose.com or these speed shops? I mean, what is it?
It's FooseDesign.com,
Foose Design,
or
okay.
MHT is the parent company. It's a licensing agreement that I've got. I design the wheels, so I own the design and I own the brand name, and that's a licensing deal I have with MHT. They do the manufacturing and the retailing, and they also, part of the agreement is when I'm building cars here, I get to design a wheel for that car, and they build the prototype. We put it on that car, and that's the car that we use to advertise that new design.
All right, Chip, I've got to get into the traffic. I've got to get back on the 405 and drive back to Marina Del Rey. I've got one last question to ask you. It's a serious question. I've got a 95 Ford Bronco. Mm-hmm. I got my stuff that I drive. My mother-in-law recently decided to sell her 2003 Ford Focus. It's metallic P. It's got alloy wheels. It's a 4-door. It's an SC model. I'm showing Chip a picture of this car right now.
There we go.
All right, Chip, if I were to have you sketch something up, just looking at it, I'm holding up an iPhone 6 just to show you what's going on right here at Foose Design. Chip, we're not going to do this, but if we were, what could we do to make that car cooler than it already is?
Well, when I look at that with that color that you have, I automatically think I'd probably black out the whole top, two-tone it, go all black on the top, and I would do an aqua, probably more in the shade of blue than green, because this color is a little bit bluer, but a solid stripe between the black and this kind of teal metallic that's here. And then I would probably go with, I don't know how big that car is, but I would probably go with a 17-inch wheel on it and open it up so that it looks like a deeper wheel. I know it's a face mount, but we can do something with some legs that go back like this wheel up here on the upper left. That's called the Speedster. I'd probably put a wheel like that on it and give it back to your mother-in-law.
Here's the thing. I bought this car from my mother-in-law.
So this is what you want to drive?
Yeah, well, see, I'm driving it.
Okay.
I told my wife, I said, I'm going to drive that 2003 Ford Focus Chip. She goes, you're not. I said, I am too. She said, no, you're going to drive something else.
Can we put an aluminum folding chair on the roof?
Man, you can do whatever you want to
So if you hit somebody, you're hitting them with that chair.
Can you give me a break on customizing this thing?
Yes, we can.
Here's the thing. Chip, when I got this car, I paid the low end of retail, the high end of trade-in, And then, so I got a good deal on it. Mother-in-law treated me good. It's not like she's a used car salesman. And I've been around the horn a few times. Maybe I got taken to the cleaners because, I like to buy stuff wholesale. Nonetheless, I paid for the car. Turns out it's got a bunch of issues. I got more money into the car in repairs than I did when I bought the car. So I got the most expensive Ford Focus in the world right now. So after I shut down this podcast, we're going into serious negotiations about how we can make this a Riddler winning car. I'm just kidding you. Chip, I appreciate you talking to me.
My pleasure.
The shop
Thank
here,
you.
the work. I loved Overhaulin. I was sad to hear that it's no longer in production, although you can still watch the reruns, I guess, on Velocity TV.
Yes, they're also
Whatever
on
channel
Netflix
it is.
as well.
Netflix. But I watch them all the time. And you said earlier in the hour you may be in talks for another show.
I'm actually in negotiations with them now, and they want me to start filming in September, so stay tuned. There may be something coming up.
All right, man. A pleasure hanging out with you.
Hey,
Love watching your work.
Like I told you before, I've been a big fan, and it's really a pleasure. You made my day.
Mine too. Thanks, Chip. All right, everybody, give me the go home cue. It's time to wrap up this podcast and ride off in the sunset. But before I do that, I got to give you guys something to watch. If you get on YouTube and type in Chip Foose, the Imposter, you'll find that badass car that we were talking about. This is a 65 Chevrolet Impala that's been shortened about 14 inches and put on a Corvette C7 frame. The technology behind this is basically a Corvette with a 65 Impala Chevy body on it that's been shortened 14 inches, and it just looks totally radical. I'm absolutely in love with the color of this damn vehicle. There's several videos of it, so take your time and check these things out. Chip Foose does amazing work over at Foose Designs, and it was a pleasure talking to him. As he said in the podcast, he's got a project that he's working on. I'm looking forward to seeing what Chip Foose is going to be doing in front of a television camera again, because when you watch these guys like him do the kind of work that he does, again, my audio couldn't capture it all. You need a camera. I hope Chip gets the show that he wants and the show that he's going to be happy with, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. Hey, gang, shifting gears. I'm going to cut this close a little bit short. All my T-shirt designs, all my beer, all my knife from Cold Steel is at BrokenSkullRanch.com. I want to say thank you guys for all the word-of-mouth advertising you guys have been doing on behalf of this podcast. I don't have an advertising budget. I appreciate you guys supporting the sponsors of this podcast because they're the ones that let me do this for you free twice a week. So big thanks to ddpyoga.com/Austin. Get 20% off anything you buy for a limited time only, including the collector's edition DVD and Blu-ray of the Resurrection of Jake the Snake documentary. Thanks to the Books. And, of course, a big thank you to Amazon, who've been supporting this podcast since day one. Use my Amazon links whenever you're doing any online shopping, and Amazon will kick back a couple of bucks to the podcast. It won't cost you nothing extra. There's no hidden fees or charges. You can buy whatever you're planning on buying and help out the podcast in the process. And you can find my Amazon links by going to PodcastOne.com, clicking on the Killer Deals button on the top right corner of the page, and then hitting the Steve Austin Show button. I got Amazon links for USA, UK, and Canada. If you bookmark that link, you can find it in one click and help support the podcast. Hey, I got a little story for you guys right before I sign off here. I always tell you guys the stories we got going over at the house here at 316 Gimmick Street or when we're down there at the ranch. And, one of the stories I told a couple of months, we had a little of a problem with one of our dogs, Shona, our black lab, who is 13 and a half years old. And, that was that issue when she had that old dog vestibular syndrome, and she was staggering around her yard, and we couldn't figure out what was wrong with her, and we finally got her diagnosed properly in Los Angeles. We got to fly back a day early from Texas back to L.A. and get her to the vet. And when she caught that disorder, that disease, I guess it's almost kind of like a mini stroke, but it severely impaired her. And she kind of, for the most part, as we say in the wrestling business, she kicked out of it. She would always kind of walk with her head at a little bit of a tilt, but for the most part, she had a high quality of life. She was still active. She was still getting the swimming pool with the dogs for a certain period of time when Kristen would let her in there. Her appetite was good, and she had a high quality of life. And, man, just a few days ago, Shona just started having these seizures. And, man, when she had these seizures, it just wasn't pretty. And so those things went on for a couple of days. I won't go into the details of everything we did. It was several trips to the veterinary office. And then we went up there one night and had to inject a lot of Valium into her system. And the doctor, sent us with some supplies to bring home because try to get her out of these seizures and give her on some anti-seizure medication. And that next day, man, things just weren't good. So to everybody that's asked me about Shona in the past, we put Shona down this past week, and we had 3 dogs. Shona was the alpha male. She was 13 and a half years old, and now Hershey's 10 and a half years old, and Moola's 3 and a half years old. So to all you people that always ask me how's Shona doing, she's no longer with us. She's in that big grass yard in the sky running around chasing tennis balls. Shona's no longer with us, and I thought I'd bring you guys up to speed because everybody's always asking about her. We miss that dog to this day. It's still taking us a while to get used to having 4 people in the house rather than 5 because our dogs are like people to us, and we talk to them all the time. But Shona, rest in peace. We miss you. Folks, keep listening. The 60-second AP News headlines are coming up next. Until then, my name is Steve Austin, and I'll catch your ass down the road.
Download new episodes of The Steve Austin Show every Tuesday at PodcastOne.com. That's PodcastOne.com.